Hey, I can ask you a question here. Well, we're going to get into some lower speeds. That's okay. I'm going to ask you a question. Are you a cat or a dog person? You a Harley person or a jet bike person? Are you a Ford or a Chevrolet man? How about a Porsche or a BMW person? You know, we all have certain things that we really like. When I grew up, I was a Chevrolet guy. My dad had a Chevrolet station wagon with 327. The only car I ever bought with any power. 327, 4-barrel, 2-speed automatic transmission. And that thing would fly. And when I was a kid, didn't have anything of my own to drive, I would borrow that. And we'd end up going down the highway and get all my friends in there, and we'd have the windows down and the air conditioning wide open, arms and legs hanging out. That was just a fantastic thing to have back then, to have access to. When you're in high school, a station wagon or a van is the ideal vehicle to have. I know a lot of guys had Mustangs, and one guy had a Corvette there in high school, but you know, that's just a 2-seater. You can't, nothing's happening in that. You get all your friends in something big. But always been a Chevrolet guy. I don't hate Fords. Fords are okay. I've always been a jet bike guy. I don't hate Harleys. I just never had one. I have owned a few Fords. Never owned a BMW. Never owned a Jaguar. I have had cats and dogs, and they are completely different, as anybody who's had cats and dogs knows. A dog, like everybody says, a dog is so happy to see you. If you want to have fun, if you haven't done it, Google the ways why it's better to have a dog than a wife. Now, I love my wife and I wouldn't trade her for anything, but I think that's the funniest. You read that list, that's the funniest thing you'll read in a long time if you haven't already read it. Now, on the other hand, cats could care less what you do. They really don't. You could leave a dog. You could leave a dog alone for a couple of days. You know, not see him, have somebody else care for him. Not see him, and when you come home, he will jump all over you. Hey, how's it going? He'll jump all over you and knock you down and lick your face. You do the same. You'll be gone for a month with a cat. Come back. Cat will take one look at you. Huh? You decided to come back, huh? I mean, that's really the attitude. But I loved my cats. I've had some great cats. I had a, gosh, I don't really remember the name of the cat. Oh, might have been, I don't know what it might have been. It might have been Caitlin or Caden or something. It was some kind of a K name. I had a little cat that a girl I was dating in college one time gave me, and it was a Siamese. And we had an accident with it. It followed us out one time, and the screen door slammed on it and unfortunately killed it, because it was a real little kitty. And it wasn't anybody's fault. We just didn't notice that he was running so fast after us. We thought we put some food down in water, and he was eating when we walked out of the kitchen. But anyway, she felt so bad about it. She went and bought me a Burmese cat. Now, a Burmese, think of a Siamese cat with the black face and, you know, all the markings. But imagine that cat chocolate brown, with every other shade of brown, from chocolate brown all the way to light tan on the cat as you go from the back all the way to the belly, around the face area, things like that. Oh, look at this valley. Isn't this cool? That was what she looked like. She was absolutely gorgeous, and she had the mouth and the voice and the attitude of a Siamese cat. Never been around a Siamese. They're pretty much royalty of cats, and they pretty much know it. You know, they know that you don't own them, they own you. And you don't treat them right, they'll let you know real quick. I named my cat Arrow after a children's cartoon. I think it was Me and Arrow, or Me and My Arrow, something like that. It was about a little cartoon boy and that way with a dog. And of course, I just used the name for the cat because I thought it was kind of cool, and it kind of fit her. And she was really interesting. When I would tick her off, which would be any of 1,000 things that she didn't like me to do. Because again, it was her house, it wasn't mine. She was just suffering me to live there. And but whenever she was really ticked off at me, I'd go in the bathroom and she craps in the tub. I'm serious. Go in there get ready to take a shower, and there's a nice little present in there for you in the bathtub. So, but anyway, but she was a really nice cat. She was a sweet cat. She was very affectionate when she wanted to be. And when she didn't want to be, she'd wouldn't let you get anywhere near her. She'd just go off and do something else. Well, where I lived in an old farmhouse, and I had the door fixed so that she could come and go. And I could be in. She didn't know I was in the house. I could be in the living room and I could hear her come in, because what she would do is, as soon as she came in the door, it was meow, 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 until I answered her. Well, if I didn't answer, after about 30 seconds of that, if she hadn't found me, and she would only go through the kitchen, she didn't go very far. If she hadn't found me, it would get real quiet. And I could count to 10 and yell her name, Arrow! And I would hear her hit the floor. What she'd done is she jumped up on the kitchen counters, which is one of the places she was not allowed to go. And I'd catch her all the time, and she'd be pissed. And she'd come find me then and meow, meow, meow. You know, she knew I caught her, but she didn't care. But she's a great cat. I had her for a long, long time. I had a real bad experience with her one time. I don't know if I ever mentioned this, but my father had a Chevrolet Blazer. He had for a lot of years, V8, big 4-wheel drive, and he got tired of it, and I bought it from him and had it out in the yard. And that's what I was driving, and this thing this was back in the days of carburetors. I don't know, you guys will know anything about this, but on a carbureted engine that had an automatic choke, when you'd fire these things up cold, they turn like about 2,500 RPMs, and they would keep turning 2,500 RPMs till you hit the throttle and let it go back to an idle. So it was just was how this thing started. And there was a flat place on the top of the water pump that was just big enough for a cat to crawl up in there when it was warm and take a nap. And one day I got up to go to work, didn't see Arrow anywhere, figured she was already out having fun for the day, or maybe asleep somewhere in the house and I just hadn't seen her. And I go out and get in the car and start it up, and I hear this god-awful screech, and all the lights on the dashboard come on. So I cut the car off real quick and went around front, and it was early in the morning, so it was pretty much black dark. And I ran into the house and got a flashlight and came out, threw up the hood, and it looked like somebody had carpeted the engine in the engine compartment with brown fur. And I said, what in the hell? And I got to looking, and the Arrow was all the way in the far corner by the back side of the engine, just going meow, meow. And what she had done, when that thing had fired up, it had scared her, and she tried to jump out, and she tried to jump through those belts. And she went through the pulley, and she knocked every single belt off of that, off the water pump. Well, now I've got a problem. I get her out, and she doesn't scratch me or fight me in any way. She's just very, I could tell she was hurt. She didn't have any fur left. And so I got her and took her in the house and laid her down on a towel, and went in the garage and got my tools and came out and had to put all the belts back on. It's the only thing I had to drive, and I had to get her to the vet. And I took her to the vet, so I had to wait a little while. The vet didn't open until 8. I got there about 7:45, and just sat there and held Arrow, and she was meow, meow. And so the vet finally gets there, and I take her in, and the vet wants to know what's going on, and I tell her. And she says, okay, well, we better x-ray her, because she wasn't bleeding from anywhere. That was the good thing. That's something I'd noticed. I'd expected her to be bleeding from internal injuries, and she wasn't. And so the vet took her in and x-rayed her, and came back and said, well, I don't know how, but the only thing that's wrong with her is she's dislocated her hip. So the vet numbed her up real good and popped her hip back into place, and there's really nothing you can do. I mean, there's no brace or anything like that you can do. And the vet said she'll limp on it for a while, and oh, there's some chickens. Hey, chickens! And she'll limp on it for a while, and but she should be okay. I don't see anything else wrong with her. Well, the vet drew some blood and did some other things while Arrow was there, and I got a call about a week later, and the vet said, look, I've got some really bad news for you. Said, I did the work I did on Arrow. I checked the blood results from the lab, and it turns out she has the beginnings of feline leukemia. And I said, oh no, what's that? And she said, well, it's a disease that a lot of cats have, and they never succumb to it. It never gets them. But unfortunately, a lot of times a trauma, very much like what she just went through, triggers the leukemia, and it comes on strong. And she said, we're going to have to watch her really carefully. I don't know if this is going to get her or not. And so I said, okay, well, about a month later, Arrow's getting around fine. She's walking and like nothing ever happened, and she's grown most of her fur back. And I noticed that she went to work one day. I noticed she was sitting on a spare bed in the spare bedroom, just sitting there looking out the window. And I went over and petted her, and you know, she purred, went on to work. Well, I came home and she was still sitting up there. I didn't really think anything of it because it's a place she liked to sit. And I went over, you know, petted her, she purred, and I went on about my business. Didn't pay much attention to her because, again, she came and went as she wanted to, and I didn't really see her that night. I didn't look in the spare bedroom again for her. I just, you know, put her food out and water her like I always did. And got up the next morning to go to work. She's still sitting there. And I went over and petted her again, and she purred, just laid there. And when I got home that night, the first thing I did was I went upstairs and checked on her to see if she was still sitting there, and yes, she was. And by this time, she had soiled the sheets, and it was clear that she was now in distress. Before, she hadn't been. She had just purred every time I went up there. She just hadn't gotten up and moved off the sofa. And apparently, renal failure apparently is part of this disease for cats, and she was suffering from that. And so I called the vet, and she stayed open for me a little while, and took her over there, and she checked her out, and she said, yeah, she's in the final stages. Best thing we can do for her is to put her down. So we did. We had to release her from her pain. But she was a great cat. I had a great cat. I went real long with just this one. I've had several great cats, and I've had some really super dogs, and I'll tell you about the rest of them later. But we're on Highway 60, headed up into Suchess. Got behind a honey wagon up here. If you don't know what a honey wagon is, ask somebody. And in this Mercedes not interested in passing. There isn't really any place to pass. And I'm just cruising anyway, no big deal. This is taking us into Suchess, and we'll be there soon. So everybody take care, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.